All right, here we go. Overdrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan.
What's going on?
What's happening?
I had my shortest relationship with a Toronto sports figure I've ever had.
Oh, yeah?
Mad Max?
No.
That's it? We're out on Max Scherzer?
He's a whole different
Or Lovelady?
No.
Richard Lovelady.
I was watching golf, and I flip over. I'm like, going to check in on the Jays, see how it's going. This is how fast my relationship with this guy was. I turn it on. There's a guy on the mound with the last name Lovelady.
Yes.
He threw one pitch and cleared the bases. And I'm like, I kind of hate this guy a little bit already. I don't even know him. I know nothing of him. And I'm like, I kind of don't like him already, everything about it. So I'm like, that's game over. He cleared the bases. Baltimore went on to slaughter Toronto. And the next day, the guy's gone.
Yeah.
Dude, my relationship with Rick Lovelady was 30 seconds long, not even.
The name is glorious, though. Rick Lovelady, like that guy should have been our Freddie the Goat for the Jays.
It was something about the way the name was on the jersey. I'm like, this guy's going to get blown up. And my relationship with him was 30 seconds.
I got to meet
I don't know
parents.
if there's anything faster as far as a guy being on your radar and then gone forever.
Well, when he made the team, there was some buzz. Like, it was kind of like in that montage with Major League, where they're like, who the hell are these guys? Like, a lot of people like, Richard Lovelady, who is this cat? And what is he bringing? Richard Lovelady, which means
Rick.
His parents are hilarious. Like, they are. You don't name your son Richard Lovelady unless you know exactly what you're doing.
Dude, what a tone setter on a date.
I love.
You mean he goes for short? Richard for short?
And your
possibly.
Name? Richard Lovelady. Anyone would say you're nuts.
Yeah,
no
that
way.
can't be your name. It sounds like a character in like a Bond film or something.
Or a porn star.
Or
let's be honest.
Possibly that. But Lovelady, it's not easy to get designated for assignment the first weekend of the season.
Dude, that means that somebody hated your guts on the didn't want you on the squad, and they're like, all right, throw him in there. And it's like, no, Lovelady.
Well, because I think the connection here is Yarbrough was the guy that was likely going to break camp as kind of the long lefty, and then the Yankees sniffed out that he had an option where he could opt out, and they probably had worked out a deal with him. So he left the Jays basically high and dry, goes down to the Bronx and starts pitching for the Yankees. So someone had to make the team. It's not a good look for the team. Like, putting jokes aside, if you have a guy break camp and 3 days in you say you're out of here, why did he make the team? How did he make the team? What does it say about the depth in your organization? It's a horrible look for the squad. There he is, Rick Lovelady. Throwing
when he switches
muffins.
to porn, he goes to Rick.
Yes. In the majors, he's Richard Lovelady. When he's in Silicon Valley, he's Rick Lovelady.
I'll tell you, the other short stint is Scherzer.
Scherzer, man.
That is a bizarro world.
Who didn't sniff this one out? Unfortunately, this is the Spider-Man meme, and it's Yanni Hockenpah and Max Scherzer staring at each other. That's what it is. Like, Max, he was, day one, this guy was talking about his thumb. Day one of camp, he was talking about his thumb.
Dude, the best part is the thumb, he claimed, helped blow out his lat.
Yeah, well, that was his concern. He's like, I could feel it in the lat. And after the game, I give him credit. He came out and spoke with the media, but he basically laid it on the line for the Blue Jays. Don't come talk to me. Don't ask me about when I'm pitching. I will let you know if I pitch again. And if I do, it'll be on my timeline, because he basically said it. He's like, now he went to see a hand specialist, I think in New York yesterday or today. He's on the 15-day IL. He's not pitching the next at least 2 or 3 times through the rotation. Maybe he returns in a few weeks. Maybe. But would you be shocked if we don't see this guy again? Like, unfortunately, I don't think you can. Everything's on the table here when it comes to Max Scherzer, including the idea that he doesn't pitch again.
What was your Jerry's? What didn't we say we would sign off on? What? How many? 20 games?
I said 15. You'd pounce on it.
Right.
I said on this show, on SportsCenter, on Jay, I said if you were off or you went into arbitration, they said I'll give you 15 Scherzer starts. You take it. $1 million a start. You have to. You had to. And now that seems like it would be a win almost. It would be a victory if you could get 15
dude,
starts
when he went out there,
out of
like,
Scherzer.
this guy might throw 65 or 80 pitches. Why is he starting anyway?
Well, that's another question because now, remember, after the game, he said, I went up to Schneider and said, be ready here. Like, it almost felt like he was kind of intimating he was hoping Schneider would pull him before he even started, which I find a little bit goofy, and I'm sorry, that's on Scherzer. That's kind of like the Alphonso Davies chat from last week. If you can't go, you're Max Scherzer. Yes. You can't go, you don't go. Like, you don't, that's not on John Schneider to figure out whether or not your thumb can hold up or your lats or whatever. Right. And I get it, you'd be jamming them up because then you got to go to an opener and the bullpen's going to be exposed, and it's game 3 of a series where the bullpen had already been kind of taxed a fair amount. But it sucks, man, because 3 innings, 2 home runs, how many pitches? 40, 45 pitches, and he's on the IL already.
Not a good look either. Like, that's the thing. Like, now, guys like this who are 40 years old, this guy's been around the block 100 times. The only thing, and I think I put this in our group chat there, like, I've played with guys, like, he knows exactly what's wrong. Like, he's a guy who's self-diagnosing, telling timelines, everything. That kind of concerns me a little bit as well. I've played with guys who, I got a bad groin. I'll be back next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Like, he knew exactly. Like, this guy was calling his shot. I don't know if that's a good thing because it's already in his head that I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm feeling that. That's red flag for me.
Yeah.
Well, the pessimistic view on this, Jamie, is if this guy was all jammed up and he just wanted to sniff out $15 million somehow, and it's like some kind of going away gift, like, who knows? Like, this stuff started in training camp. Notice how it was really quiet, and then right leading up to the beginning of the season, it was like, yeah, my thumb's all jammed up, man. My thumb's thumb. And then all of a sudden, his thumb caused his lat to seize up. It was like, really, dude? Like,
and Schneider before the game was asked, like, how are we feeling about Max? And he's like, Mad Max is ready to go. He's raring to go. We're jacked up. And then after the game, I could feel it when I was warming up. I knew my thumb was jacked, and I was going to blow my lat out.
About this is, Hayes,
it's just a horrible way to start the year.
If Max Scherzer was dialed in and good to go for one last season, why weren't the usual suspects sniffing around? Maybe they were, but what? You telling me they didn't want to offer the extra money?
Well, money's a thing. I mean, passing a physical is another thing. Whether or not you can rely on the guy, like, this is the issue the Jays have, is they just don't have a lot of depth in the organization. Like they're not. Happens seemingly every year. Again, this is a little bit premature, but you go to the minors, you're like, who do you have that's coming up? Who do you have that's coming up? And Uriel Rodriguez could be a guy that they want to stretch out, but he looked great yesterday in the 8th inning. I think they like the idea of weaponizing his arm, like 1 inning at a time, and Hoffman pitched well. They got a split over the weekend. That was big.
Yeah,
like, they still 2-2. You got Washington in town for 3 here. You got to take advantage of this. Got to win this series. Then you hit the road and you see what happens. But Keegan Matheson will join us in about an hour, and Keegan was around the club all weekend, and he was there before the game when Scherzer and Schneider were speaking, after the game when they both spoke. That's the story of the weekend, though, because there was so much excitement for Scherzer to be a Blue Jay. And he gets 3 innings in. He's on the IL, and who knows what's going to happen.
Let me ask you this, just quickly. Like, were there people that bought his jersey?
Yeah,
this
for
would be
sure.
Interesting.
For sure.
So I'm saying, like, if you're the Jays, like, have they recouped some of the $15 million? And, like, I know they don't care about it, but even if it was a play to get a big name in here, was it worth it? Like, that's the thing. If this guy doesn't pitch anymore, and I do believe he will, but
hopefully he will. Yes, hopefully he will.
But there are people that bought his jersey that were fired up to have that type of cachet, that type of name. It was worth the gamble. I was just looking at it. Oh, this guy's made $345 million.
That's the thing, man.
Like, it's not like he's looking to put an extra 15 in his jeans.
He's been
like,
making
he's
30.
He makes a lot of money.
Right.
Man, the Mets paid him $40 million.
From the Jays' perspective, they were like, look, we're not going to be world beaters this year. Try to get Santander and try to get some other name where you can at least if we're going to be bad and not have a great record, we got to bring up the entertainment value. And Scherzer was a part of that plan, and he's gone after 3 innings.
Yeah. And again, now we wait to see what happens, and if he has surgery, if it's rehab, how long it is. We don't know. We don't have those answers right now, but it was really deflating to watch him go 3 innings and get hit the way he got hit, and he gets pulled and said what he said after the game. And now they're already, they're going to plan B, plan C. Right. They're making moves in the bullpen. They're making moves in the rotation. And, it's this early into the season. So we'll get into that with Keegan a little bit later this afternoon. The Leafs with a very professional road trip. You leave a point at the Shark Tank of all places, and then go into LA and beat the Kings, and then on a back-to-back, I think kind of fight for 2 points last night. And I thought it was a very impressive trip when you look back on it retrospectively. It started in a strange way, but it gets back to what we talked about on Friday. Them getting the point.
Yes.
Changes the complexion of the trip a little bit.
Sure.
Take advantage of getting that point, and you can still make it a great road trip. If you get on that bird in Anaheim and you got 5 or 6, that's all any team, regardless of how good you are, how talented you are. That's what the Caps, that's what the Jets, that's what the Florida Panthers are all looking for in a road trip like that. Get 5 or 6 and get the hell out of there. And that's exactly what they did.
However you come about it, like we can, we live the day to day. That's our job or whatever. But however you go about it, when you get on that bird after 3 games, you could have easily left, we'll say left a point in LA or left, it doesn't matter where you left the point. If you got 5 or 6, that's the way I look at it. And I say it all the time. You don't criticize wins. You don't criticize how you go about it. Now, these are bigger conversations, but it was a good weekend for them. I thought that LA game was tight checking. Yep. It wasn't a high event. It was kind of just, it was a tight. LA plays that smothering style. And Anaheim, you could see, like, they're a young team. They've got some skill and they can move, but they've got their warts in their game too. And the Leafs were methodical with it. And I didn't think they had their best, but in a back-to-back. And, I thought they did enough to win. And that's what you need. I thought Joseph Wall made a couple good saves.
Yep.
I liked their game. And, overall, you get 5 or 6 in California, which could have been, it would have been worse if you beat LA in LA and then you lose last night. Like that.
Last night was the big one. You want to come home on a winning note. Anaheim again is a team that you can see they're adding talent. Like they're getting better. I thought a number of their young kids actually. I like Zegras' game last night. Like that's the guy we've been critical of. I thought he was in the game and he had some bite and I thought he played well. And they got some players there that in the future might be something. It may not be an easy trip 2-3 years from now, but as of now, it still is. And the toughest one is LA. And LA, I think Berube, what he said after the game, speaks volumes about where their head is at right now. That's a playoff style game, like tight checking, low scoring. You got to stay with it, and at some point, your big boys got to break out for you. And the goal Matthews scored on Saturday was unbelievable.
Excuse me, that third period, that's the reason. It's not strategic or learning to fight through checks. Number 34 in the third period, I thought that was his best period all season long.
He was great.
He was unreal. He was dominant. And that emotion right there, he basically said, like, give me the pill and I'm going to take it to the cage and nobody's going to stop me. He was awesome in that third period.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was. And, Tavares is at the right place at the right time. The tap one home, again, goes to the net, stops.
But 34, he drove the bus there. And I have no idea, guys. The video reviews are getting insane.
I thought that was
I don't know how they didn't call that high sticking.
I thought it was too,
either.
But listen. You're gonna get Hayes. You say it all the time. Like sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. They got the benefit of that call. I thought it was high stick, but it didn't matter. He comes back and scores anyways. In the end, it just. When you get a video review and it actually is conclusive, I actually switched over. So I was on the road so I could see both broadcasts. So I went to the LA broadcast. The LA broadcast actually had lines and we're showing it like, hey, this is way above his shoulder. And anyways, it doesn't matter. You got the call. You did the job. But it was weird to see some of these calls not happening. So I hate
that they review high stick earlier in the play.
I honestly think for the high stick one,
call it live.
If the referee or the linesman says no and waves it off, then sorry, you can't.
Same thing where they might have touched it with his hand 30 seconds ago. Yeah. Sorry, like it's so stupid.
It's over. It's overkill. I get it because it's earlier in the play too. I think. Is there something, maybe down the road, this is more a bigger conversation where it's like, if the play goes on for 10 seconds more, you can't go back. Like something weird like that. I don't know. It's just because You're right. Like it had no effect onto, how the goal came about because it was so much farther in the play. But you're like, okay, 43 seconds ago, the guy did this with his glove or the guy did this with his stick. It was just some of these are weird transactions, man.
Yeah.
The way it's a goal, if the guy doing or whoever does the video review They panned to Auston Matthews' face on the bench, and he's like, "Oh, we're screwed. That was high sticking. It's no goal." And then he's like, "Let's just carry on, guys. Carry on." And then the guy said goal, and you could see him. He's like, "Are you kidding me? That's a goal?"
Yeah, I know.
He started laughing. That's the true
it.
test because he looked at it and says, "That's high sticking. We're screwed."
Yeah, that should be the way they determine it if they're going to do it. Don't go to review. Go look at the guy.
Go look at the guy's face.
Like, look at him panning. He's like, "Man, we're screwed. That's not a goal."
Yeah.
And then he
that
was
would be
like,
it.
"You got to be kidding me, man."
I know. And then the next night, Marner, high stick, and they wave it off. And it's like, okay, well, there you go. But, it sets up well for the Leafs because now they get a 3-point buffer. Florida's in Montreal tomorrow night. We'll get to that momentarily. Then Florida is in town on Wednesday night, which becomes the biggest game of the year. The 2 against Florida, the 1 against Tampa. That's it. Like that is what is going to determine who wins this division. The Leafs have 8 games left. Tampa and Florida both have 9. The Leafs have a 3-point buffer. As of right now, it's pretty close in terms of tiebreak with regulation wins. They're right there with Tampa. They have a couple of in hand on Florida in that category. So it may come down to a tiebreak. It more than likely will come down to those 3 games. But what it also sets up for, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse because I don't want to get this kind of mojo out there. But like the Battle of Ontario is on the line here. Like that's what is on the line. Like Ottawa picked up a point in Pittsburgh yesterday. They won a couple of nights ago. They have a 7-point buffer on that second wild card. Ottawa's in as the first wild card. It's over. It's the Ottawa Senators are playing either Toronto, Tampa, or Florida. Yeah. And the Battle of Ontario is right there.
You're fired up for a Battle of Ontario.
I'm dying for this now because you know what it also sets up is a Battle of Florida, which I also want to see desperately. And I think it would be great for hockey, great for the sport, great for the province, great for the fan base in both Ontario and Florida and hockey fans everywhere. You can't beat that in terms of this division. Like maybe Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Montreal, something like some combination if you mix the Habs into it somehow. But if you have Tampa versus Florida, a 7-game brawl, which is exactly what I think it would be, and the Battle of Ontario reignited for the first time in 20 years, it has to happen now. Like it has to happen. I'm trying to will this into existence, and I'm worried I'm going to jinx it now, and everything's going to fall apart. But Ottawa's done their part. Like Ottawa is now pretty.
Ottawa's going to the playoffs.
They're in the playoffs. They're going to the playoffs.
It's 99% probability.
It's over. And they're the first wild card. It's over. They're not catching the other 3 teams.
Everybody's coming out with these like probabilities, guys. There's some teams, I'm sorry, like Calgary, Vancouver.
You're out. Book your tee time. You're done. Yeah, those they have their clubs out.
Say book your tee time.
That's harsh because it's unnecessary.
Yeah, but they're going to have to go like 8-0 and
it's not happening.
Yeah, and the other teams are going to have to lose. They're done. It's not happening. So there's some teams that it's like, sorry, you can pump the games up. You can have speeches with the media. Your team's done. Sorry.
Yeah, like Calgary's got games in hand, but they're starting to leak some oil here. Like Draisaitl basically said, pack your bags on Saturday night. Like that one stung, man. He snipes with 3 minutes to go and then buries them in overtime. And, they still got a point. But I just don't think it's realistic to expect that Vancouver and Calgary are in this race anymore.
What you were waiting for was if St. Louis or Minnesota, like Minnesota has kind of stubbed their toe. They're 5-4-1. It's St. Louis has won 9 in a row.
Yes.
9. So if they went 7-2, 6-3, which good teams have been doing, right? Like, then it's more realistic. Like this team has rattled off 9 in a row and something like 17-2-2 in their last 21. I'd have to look that exact stat up, but I believe I'm accurate on that. That's a run that is unheard of based on where that team was. They're selling off players. There was rumors of Shen being traded, all of that type of stuff. Since that Four Nations face-off, this team has been lights out.
Yeah, hottest team in the league.
Maybe that was a little plan. Like, maybe I kind of hate you guys. And then they're like, guys, we might want to put it together here. Maybe those guys weren't even available to begin with.
I got a question for you guys. Does Jimmy Montgomery get a little love for Coach of the Year?
Listen, there have been examples of that. The guy who takes over 20 games in or whatever, it was more than that because he got fired from Boston first.
You guys know my thoughts. Spencer Carberry is your Coach of the
Year.
Well,
I understand. Listen, Spencer Carberry, I think there's 3 or 4. I mean, Scott O'Neill hasn't done anything to hurt himself in Winnipeg either,
sure.
But I'm like this St. Louis team, it was an afterthought. They were an afterthought. It was like, man, this is Calgary and Vancouver spot. They're going to battle it out.
I think Hayes said earlier in the year, St. Louis isn't going anywhere.
Of course I said that.
I know.
Of course you said.
Of course I said that.
But we all
pack your bags, book your tea time. I think I said that in St. Louis 2 months ago.
But the point being is, I look at this team. Is there a market correction that at least opens the door for Vancouver or Calgary? I don't think so, but you never know. Well,
Noodles. Calgary, maybe. But, like, here's the thing.
I think it's over.
It's over because, like, Calgary's 7 points out, and, you know.
With three games in hand.
3 games in hand, don't have the wild card. So you're actually probably 8 points out, right? Because if it's regulation wins. So you're 8 points out with 10 games to go, and why would those two teams slow down? They're going to lose some games. They lose to lose at some point. They may lose. It just seems too much, and it just feels like Calgary. You know, they like that again. Draisaitl kind of burying them the other night. That would have been a big one. Battle of Ontario or Battle of Alberta. You win that game, you hold on. Well, the game before they were all bent out of shape because of the officiating.
Well, twice they got jammed up on goalie review. Yeah. Twice, not just one. I think you're right. I think it's just too big of a hill. It's just the St. Louis team has been so. I mean, I didn't see it coming. I thought they were a good team and good young talent, all that type of stuff. But it's another level. Like they went in and beat Colorado. You know, they went in like they're winning significant games. And now you're right. Like the Flames are in Colorado tonight. Colorado's going to be pissed from losing to St. Louis the other night. So I think it could be over for Calgary. Vancouver has just been an enigma all season long. So
yeah, like they're already out in Vancouver. They're putting a bow on it, like talking about Patterson and Demko and what happens with Rick Tocchet. Like that's the big story. What do you do with Rick Tocchet in the future? And does he want to still be there?
His contract's up. That's a guy who I would be, if I'm Philly, I'm looking at Rick Tocchet and saying, come and fill our shoes here. Like to me, there's organizations that if Rick Tocchet's available in the offseason, I think you go right after him, especially if Vancouver's not signing him to an extension.
Well, I mean, they got to figure out what they're doing out there. It's just, in Vancouver. I mean, what do you reset immediately? Can you get back on the horse next year? Like Pettersson's going to end up with like 55 points this year.
Like with Pettersson, 100-point Pettersson, with 100-point JT Miller, and
healthy Demko. It's like this is a dangerous unit. You're a 100-point team. You bring in
Hedl, JT Miller's gone, and Pettersson is playing like a 3-4 combo. Like third or fourth line player who shows up once every 10 games, you are not even close to a team that has a chance to do absolutely anything.
Yeah.
So what the hell they're going to do there is going to be fascinating.
Well, and the crazy part is Quinn Hughes is still like he's 25 years
rocking.
Old.
Well,
it's unbelievable.
And I was reading this morning that like he's apparently reportedly got a really good connection with Tocchet. So if that's the case, Tocchet's got that in his back pocket because if you're Vancouver, you are doing whatever you have to make sure Quinn Hughes is happy. Like if Hughes is connected with Tocchet and feels like Tocchet's the guy that can get him out of this, that doesn't give you a free pass forever. That's not the way it works.
No.
But that's leverage in favor of Tocchet because I'm sure Hughes is looking around saying, what the hell is happening around here? How did we get here?
I don't think it's Rick Tocchet's responsibility to get this team out of it. I think it's player personnel, and I think Alvin and Jimmy have to do something to put it back because that team is in shambles. Sorry.
Well, they don't score. Offensively, and Pettersson's been injured. They've got some injury problems.
That's what they need to fix. But
they don't score.
Yeah, Hedl is not a frontline guy. Sorry.
No,
I don't care what he did in New York or how good they thought he was or what they thought they could. I would have. I don't know. It's such a bizarre scenario, but the personnel has got to get better.
You're right. Hedl could be your 2 if Pettersson is your 1. Pettersson's not like it all falls into place if your best players play your best. Demko's been unavailable. Pettersson has been like you guys just laid out.
You think Hedl can be an 80-point guy, Jamie, and be an impact player?
I think he can be you know what his biggest problem is, has been health. Like I think he's a really good player, but he hasn't been healthy. And I don't know if a young guy can break through these, the inconsistency of being, healthy or not. I do think I think he can be a second line player. I do. I think he's a good player, but that means second line, not first. Your top line has to be your top line. Like there's a pecking order, and when the pecking order's out of whack, where you just laid out your number one guy's a 55, 60 point guy, that's not good enough.
No, it's not.
That
going to
puts
fly.
stress on everybody else.
Absolutely. All right, we've got Keegan Matheson coming up from the Park. Jays Nats tonight. Get his take on what he saw all weekend. Where do we go from here with the Scherzer scenario and the Blue Jays, and who are they calling up? How's the rotation going to work? The bullpen going to hold up? Also, some bats that were really positive, right? Like Bichette's off to a heater. He's off to a great start. They get a split against Baltimore. You'll take it. Keegan coming up just after 5. The Leafs are back in action on Wednesday with Florida in town. We'll start looking ahead to that. We'll get to something to chew on as well. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. OverDrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Keegan Matheson in about a half an hour. I've got a list of the 5 series I desperately want to see in the first round. Might get to that at some point today.
All
and
right.
tomorrow,
Might get to it.
We're each going to come up. It's not a wussy segment. Like, it's not shying away from anything. We're going to call it Fear Factor. The 5 or 6 things from either Tampa, Florida, or Ottawa that should get your attention. It might be Tampa's power play, Vasilevsky, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Paul Maurice, the Sens hunger.
Okay.
There's a bunch of things that should get your attention. All 3 of us are going to come up with a list tomorrow.
I love it.
All right.
Fear Factor tomorrow. Okay, yeah, because, listen, the Leafs, they could have technically clinched last night if Montreal had lost in Florida, but the Habs go down there and win at the Panthers. They've beaten Florida twice now in the last, week and a half.
Dude,
Got chippy, too.
Yeah. Well, that
at the end of the game.
Yeah, so Niko Mikkola.
That guy's a big boy, too.
Mikkola. So if you missed it, I'm sure we can run it on TSN 4 right at the end of the game. Game's over 4-2. He comes around his own net and wires a slap shot down the ice and almost hits David Savard. Savard luckily looked back at the last second, and people started freaking out.
Yeah.
And the refs got in there and grabbed them, and they play at the Bell Center tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Now, I think that on
appointment viewing.
That on its own, you do that on its own, I think you have to step up and fight tomorrow night. You get pulled to the bench and then start chirping when you're on the bench, it's mandatory at that point.
You might get Jack Guy as an appy in warm-up.
I think it's Josh Anderson or Jack Guy. Like, Mikkola has to be prepared, and if he doesn't, he's in for one tomorrow night. Like, again, the slap shot alone, I think someone's knocking on your door, but you might be able to say, stupid, shouldn't have done it. But you get to the bench and then start chirping when you're on the bench.
Yeah, you got a handful.
That's not going to fly in Montreal.
Well, thing is, though, they got to be. Montreal's got to be smart about it.
They got to win
because they need the points.
Yes,
Florida doesn't need the points. They don't care. Like, I don't think Panthers care where they finish. I think they're just want to be healthy. I saw Tkachuk skating. Montreal needs to make the playoffs. Now they can smell it, right? Like their probability, I believe, is the highest out of the teams that are still hanging around there in that lot. They're at like 43%, where I think the Rangers are at 26 or something.
Between the Rangers and the Habs, Jamie, who has the tougher schedule?
Montreal's got a game in hand. I can give you New York's schedule. I'll give it to you right now on the fly. So the Rangers have 8 games left. They've got Minnesota, Jersey, Tampa, Philly, at the Islanders, at Carolina, at Florida, Tampa. Oh. That's tough coming home.
The Rangers have the second hardest schedule left in the NHL, and Montreal has the 28th.
Whew. So
as far as strength of competition,
right? Because
Montreal plays Chicago, Nashville, Philly, Boston, and Detroit.
They got Ottawa and the Leafs in there too.
Right. Well, but I'm looking at the ones that aren't in the playoffs.
Right.
Where Montreal has. They also have Carolina, the Leafs, Florida, and Ottawa once. So Montreal has 5 teams that aren't in the playoffs, 4 that are in the playoffs, where the Rangers have 4 that are in the playoffs, 3 that aren't. So they're at the winning percentage that they are playing against is close to 600, 579. So, the Rangers
got to play the games.
You got to play the games. That's the thing. And who knows what's going to happen near the end of the season, too, if teams start resting. Like, that's the other thing is you might play, your last game of the season might be against a team that's really good, but that's resting everybody. Mm-hmm. That's where that comes in. changing topics slightly, but it ties into this. Like Ovi gets Sid the last game of the season. He might do it the last game of the season, head-to-head against Sid. Who knows? But I look at these remaining schedules. The Rangers have the second hardest. Detroit has the number one hardest as far as quality of competition.
Yeah, that's tough. And, yeah, that would be cool. I mean, Ovi now, he's 5 back of the record. He's hit 890 goals. And against Sid, the Pens, that would be incredible theater. It wouldn't surprise me if it came down to that final game. And you'll get your best out of Pitt. Like, you were there calling it last night. I love that Sid just gave it to Artem Zub last night. Or Zub, good for him for going at him too. But Sid was like,
he was pissed,
fighting at him. He was like, "You want to go? I will take you if you want a piece."
You know what that?
Then he scores the OT winner. It's just incredible.
You know what's that said to me is this guy, regardless of where, because his team had been rinsed 2 games in a row, giving up a touchdown, right, and no good, all of that. Gord had to ask him that. Gord's close with Sid, and he said, you guys had a tough stretch. Like, that's a tough conversation to ask somebody that you're very close with in the media. But he goes, you guys have had a tough schedule, and Sid's like, hey, we're just trying to get our game in order, see how it is down the stretch. He was very diplomatic. But you can tell, like, that's a guy with a ton of pride. And he played his ass off last night. Tristan Jarry's had a terrible season, played very well yesterday. Like, Ottawa, the weirdest thing, and I know you can't complain about it, but it's these back-to-backs where it's like you play the night before and then it's a 5 o'clock game the next day, or sort of like in you travel. That's not good. Like, it's almost scheduled losses or scheduled garbage games. Like, that's what concerns me for the league as far as the product. When you have back-to-back games, it should be spaced out. The 2 hours for me is big. I don't know how
it's massive, Jamie. And I think even the Leafs, the schedules for everybody since the Four Nations have been absolutely bonkers.
It's ridiculous.
So much hockey. Think about the Leafs have been. They've been to New York. They've been out to Colorado, Vegas, back for a couple.
3 times.
California.
California. It's just how do you expect them? That's why, for the most part, I've been pumping the brakes on just criticism. That's just too much hockey and too much travel. And they've gotten through it. And now they're in first place, and now they can really take off staying in the East Coast.
That's kind of where I was going with this is if you want your product to be good, then you have to give the product every opportunity to be good. And to me, I get it. I understand it's way above our pay grade as far as, TV rights and times and building availability. But it should be mandatory. It's 24 hours or you can't play that game. There's no reason why you couldn't have played at 7 o'clock last night in Pittsburgh. Like, it was a 5 o'clock game. I don't know what the reasoning be. But I thought, Ottawa showed up, played hard, and it was kind of a weird game. It wasn't nothing burger, but it was you have to give your audience at least something. And we talk about these Leaf games too, where it's travel and they don't have it that night. Well, yeah, the schedule sucks for everybody at some point, and then the product suffers.
Well,
we see it all the time.
And what you are seeing is some guys, that 2-week break though was very substantial, and John Tavares is at the forefront of this. I believe he scored more goals than anyone else in the league since the Four Nations. And I believe William Nylander had more points than anybody in the league since the Four Nations. Now, Willie went to the Four Nations, but I guess he got out of there quicker than the other two. But John Tavares, he's up to 35 goals on the season. It's an incredible season. The guy's got 35 goals, 69 points. Now, I will say this, because I've had these conversations. I'm sure you guys have as well. I don't label this as a contract year he's stepping up, because this is what he has done literally his whole career. Numbers fluctuate a little bit. Sometimes it's 32 goals, sometimes it's 41. Right. But this isn't a contract year is a guy who usually scores 15 that scores 32.
Exactly.
That's not what's happening here with John Tavares. He has been consistently a very good to great player since he walked into the league at 18 years old. Every year, his stats are about the same. Again, some fluctuation. But this is not an example of a guy that just hit the gym last summer and said, I got to get paid here. He's been doing it his whole career.
But the question about
it's a testament to him, though.
The question about it is, which is the question I get a ton, is what does it mean to you? How could you not want that in the future? And that's where I have to talk people off the ledge, and I'm like, you just let this team play in the playoffs, and then you make a decision about everybody moving forward.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%. There's no, and the other thing too is getting ahead of it is when is the drop off? When does Father Time
exactly.
catch up?
Because you don't want to be a part of it for the drop off.
But this isn't. Brian, you make a great point. Like, this isn't this guy, doubling his goals. Like, this is a guy who's been very consistent and really earned his keep throughout the full 7 years here in Toronto. So if you are looking for sample size, you could go on it and say, we know what this guy's capable of. Yes, is he going to drop to 24 goals in a season, 22? Yes. But what does he bring to the table? Where does he fit financially, term, all of that? You can make a case for all of that. But you have to get ahead of it, or he has to get ahead of it. At some point, Father Time is going to go, the legs aren't there, everything slows down. Now, Sid, Gino, all of you name, some top players who are great players. Their production still is kind of there.
Yes, it is to an extent. I mean, Sid's an extreme example, and maybe Tavares will do that. But that is an example of, okay, we're going to keep paying you maybe for what you did in the past, but the difference is they haven't won anything here. So, from my standpoint, the leverage is still in the hands of the Maple Leafs. Like, if John really wants to be a Leaf, then the Leafs will let him know what they're comfortable in giving him. Yes. And that's what he's going to have to take. Like, I don't buy this idea that his number's going up. No, it's not. They know who he is.
Mean, his number?
His cap hit. Like, he's now they got to pay him 8.5 because he's going to score 40. It's absolutely. Well, you can say no. I mean, that's the reporting. Right, that's what some people are perpetuating, that it's costing more now. I'm not buying that for a second. And again, there's just no reason to even have the conversation if you're the Leafs until after the playoffs.
I consider
if they lose again in the first round, it doesn't matter. Like, you've been here for 7 years, it hasn't worked.
I consider it to be similar to a Stamkos situation where Steven Stamkos had a number of $32 million that he wanted to shove in his pants. He got it.
Yes, he did.
Guess where it was?
In one of the worst places in the league right now.
It was in a different organization than the one he's been with. So if you have the number and you still believe that all these guys are getting paid, you still got to get paid. And if he has that type of number in his mind, it's probably going to be a secondary team. It's the same thing as Claude Giroux with the Philadelphia Flyers. He probably thought, I need on a 3-year deal. I want to shove $18 million in my shorts.
Yeah,
Philadelphia is like, you're not doing that here, but you're going to do it in Ottawa, though.
Well,
it's a different team that gives you that second contract where you have the number in mind.
That's what they have to determine.
Not the team that has given you $77 million.
Yes. Now, generally speaking, that's the case. The Leafs, they react differently than than most teams in the league. Like, they do not. They don't react to these contracts like a team that's stable and confident in their program. Generally, they buckle and they say, we can't possibly live without you. So that may happen. We can't discount that. We can't pretend as if the Leafs won't just say, fine, here's a 5-year deal at $8 million a year. That might happen. It might.
A 5-year deal at $8 million a year?
Absolutely, it could happen. Absolutely, it could happen.
That's...
Have you been paying attention to these guys, the way that they operate in this front office? When have they ever won a contract negotiation? When? Give me one example when they've won with the big boys.
Well,
give
with
me
the
one.
big boys, no. I mean,
exactly.
No, and
so
I can see it.
I'm just saying, don't roll your eyes like that's impossible. I'm not predicting it's going to happen. Don't pretend like it's impossible to happen.
Old.
I know, but you know what? Brian's right, but I'll go in a different way. Tanev's deal's how long? How long is Chris?
6-year deal or whatever.
6 or 7 years, right? Because they got the AAV down and they'll deal with it on the back end. I could see a term deal for John Tavares where they try to bring the number down. That would be the only thing, because that's where, obviously, Brad Treliving, that was his thought process in the offseason. I want Tanev on my team. I'll deal with it. I don't think Chris Tanev is going to play until he's 41 years old. But he got him onto his team when he needed him, and that's the next couple years.
My philosophy, Jamie, is if the team doesn't have success in the playoffs again, I want different people on the team to try to create different results.
100%, but it might be.
I agree with that,
but
that doesn't mean the Leafs will see it that way. And you're right. Maybe Marner leaves, and then they look at it and like, okay, we got to allocate money differently and build it differently.
Said it the best. Like, the exercise is to try to win here. Like, that's what we're talking about. If you're trying to bring them back to keep the jersey sales and it's Johnny Toronto, this or that. Go ahead and do it.
But here's the thing.
Not the exercise.
From his standpoint, he is going to have, like, if the Leafs hold strong, regardless of what happens. Again, because contracts are being paid for what you're going to do during the term of the contract, not what you've done in the past. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Not naive enough to believe that hasn't factored into some contracts in pro sports. We know that there are examples of that. But John will have to determine if the Leafs hold strong. I don't know if they will. Again, I don't know what they're thinking behind the scenes. But let's say they look at it like, if you want to be here, this is what we can give you. 2 years or 3 years at X dollars. He has to determine, do I want to make money or do I want to play for the Leafs? That's it. It's that simple. It's not deeper than that. And if you want to make money, if it's business instead of hometown and actually winning with the Leafs, then you might have to go somewhere else. Because that's
exactly
what Stamkos
right.
did.
Yes, exactly right.
That's what you're saying. It was Tampa will keep you, but
you're not going to shove 32
No,
in
exactly.
your jeans.
If you're in it for money, you're going to have to go somewhere else.
That's right.
And that may end up happening.
Yeah. And I want no part
of it. And if so,
any,
he'll get paid somewhere because he's having a great year and he's a great player.
Like if I was running it, I want no part of being a part of a player where the wheels fall off. So you mentioned 5 years. Stamkos signed for 4 years. There is going to be no term where I'm having a player where I'm looking at it and the wheels are falling off because that's going to happen eventually.
Absolutely.
Like
Father Time's undefeated.
Of his career, people have said the wheels are going to come off sooner or later. I don't want it on my watch. But so the term is very, very short.
But the thing is I think in their thought process, if the cap going up, they'll be able to get what they want out of their players. And if it doesn't work, they have money. They've got Robert Island. There's lots of things. And that's where if they want to make it work. And again, this is through the playoffs. Because if they have success in the playoffs and they want to bring somewhat of the band back, because Mitch Marner controls his own destiny. John Tavares is different because he wants to stay. It's more about age, term, all of that. Mm-hmm. But I think they could go hand in hand, regardless of success or not, because if Mitch Marner at the end of the season just puts his hand up and says, I want to test free agent and I'm going to go somewhere else, they've got to allocate that money. They don't give it to Tavares. They've got to bring in somebody else that is going to replace Mitch Marner or by committee. There will be money to be had.
Yeah, there's a lot of money that is available, you know, depending on what they do with these guys and also with the cap going up and there's flexibility and but again, I think it's been reported on that the Leafs are not going to determine anything until they figure out what's going on with Marner. So that
and what happens in the playoffs because there's no
exactly.
threat. Like if you don't have success, there is no threat of a player saying, I might go play some. Go ahead, play somewhere else.
Yeah. And he's been great. And listen, what to his credit, like there were times a year ago, 2 years ago, where it was like this guy's on the third line, this guy's on the wing, and John Tavares has pulled his weight. He has been phenomenal for this team. And if you're the Leafs, you're like, let's keep it rolling here, keep it rolling into the playoffs, get that top seed, push it into the playoffs, keep pushing, keep moving, and everything's all good. All right, we've got Keegan Matheson coming up. We'll get more into that road trip over the weekend. Who else stood up? Like Max Domi now all of a sudden scored. He's got 5 goals in the month of March. Like he started. That was a beauty the other night too. Radko Gudas had a tough night too. We'll touch on that. And we got something to chew on. Brought to you by Boston Pizza as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.
Who's drawing the cartoons of us that made me look like Shrek? The one, I look like Shrek, like I'm a giant cartoon character, and I dwarf you guys in the middle, and my head's the size of a pumpkin. Who did that?
Well, I don't know. It's AI or some website or something like that. They were sent to us. You can't be rattled about a cartoon. You can't do it, man.
Caricatures, though.
I knew you saw that cartoon and you were like, "That is what I needed."
I don't think it's that bad. And plus, that's you in the past, man. It's an old pick. You've turned the corner.
Oh, really? You couldn't have grabbed a pic of me yesterday?
Well, I think the new one, the other one looks better.
Look at the
What's wrong with that? Like you got a big head.
No, it's squared off too. Like it's like a. I don't know.
That basically means that I just go home and eat that picture.
Well, I hate to break it to you. That was like kind of the stage you were in. Here's the thing: you put on 50 after that picture.
There was a bulk barn. Yeah,
that was 7 or 8 years ago. Like you put on 50, and now you've lost it all plus.
Dude,
That's just a fact, man.
I'll tell you one thing. The thing that might have saved me from getting to 4 bills.
Yeah.
If I was aware during my sour key like stage and all that stuff, if I was aware of what Uber Eats could do, because there was a bunch of nights where you're like, I'm out of keys. Do I go get them? If I had known that I could just bust in the keys and other junk, I would have been $4
Yeah, you were a junkie, basically.
Like you were probably in the.
Oh,
if
I'm
there
not
was
saying,
Uber Eats when you were down.
Oh, it would have been a disaster.
Look out!
I understand. I understand that would have been a real issue for me. But you would have been like 3 a.m, like sweating, asking for Uber Eats to drop off.
Yes, because you know what Hayes was in college. You had some financial backing, so you would have Uber Eats would have been on your speed dial.
Dude, Uber Eats would have shot me to $4. I think within 6 months.
That would have been bad, man. Like
because there's nights where it's like bad weather. Do I want to go get the keys?
Yeah, I'm itching here, man. I need a key. I need a key of keys. Who's got the good stuff?
If you could just grab your, you just search who's got the keys on Uber Eats, man. You are done.
Who's got that good stuff? That would have been you sending out the bat signal at 3 a.m. Yeah. Who's got the good stuff?
But I'm telling you, Uber Eats. If and it was available to me, and I just didn't know it. I didn't. It would have ruined everything, man.
I know. Yeah. I'm with you, man. I would have been right there with you. But I don't know. I don't know where these came from. We were sent them this morning. I think those are pretty good pictures. I don't know where my eyes went. My eyes are gone, man. The one picture, I just don't have eyes.
It's a college picture. That's what it is. Like listen, those. You know what? People are mad at us or whatever, sending comment. Listen, it's just it's a cartoon. That's it. Get on with it. I think
it's a cartoon.
It's awesome. They're
cool. Well done.
O's head
Good
is
job.
a little bit. You know what? Even in
Big
that
head.
picture, the real picture. Your head is twice the size in the cartoon. I don't know why it's so big.
They did do you dirty on that front.
They did you dirty.
I'll give you that.
It's awful.
All right, hour 2 coming up. Keegan will join us from the park. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.